Sofia Martinez stood at the entrance of Viñedos Ancestrales, the centuries-old winery that had been her workplace for the past 4 years. The morning sun cast long shadows across the ancient stone buildings, their weathered walls telling stories of countless harvests and generations of winemakers. At 26, she had already earned a reputation as the most efficient administrative assistant the winery had ever employed, but today felt different. Change was coming, and she could feel it in the crisp morning air. The news had spread like wildfire through Granada's tight-knit wine community. Viñedos Ancestrales had been acquired by Karim Al-Rahman, a 31-year-old Arab millionaire known for transforming traditional businesses into global powerhouses. Sofia's colleagues had spent weeks speculating about the implications of this change, their whispered conversations echoing through the barrel rooms and ancient cellars. As she walked through the familiar corridors toward her office, Sofia's mind wandered to her grandmother Eleanor, who had raised her since childhood. That morning, before leaving for work, Elena had read her coffee grounds, an old tradition she insisted on maintaining, and had cryptically mentioned that significant changes were coming beyond just the new ownership. "Remember me, Nina," Elena had said, her wise eyes twinkling. "Sometimes the most beautiful wines come from the most unexpected blends." Sofia's reverie was interrupted by the sudden burst of activity around her. Employees rushed to their positions, their faces a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. The new owner was arriving today, and everything had to be perfect. She quickly reviewed her meticulously prepared welcome package, ensuring every document was in place. The sound of expensive tires on gravel announced his arrival. Through the large windows of the main building, Sofia watched as a sleek black Mercedes pulled up to the entrance. The car door opened, and Karim Al-Rahman emerged, his presence immediately commanding attention. He was tall, with olive skin and dark eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. His perfectly tailored suit spoke of wealth, but it was his confident yet graceful movement that truly caught Sofia's attention. The introduction meeting in the grand tasting room was tense. The board members, led by Vicente Romero, the conservative head of the council, sat rigid in their chairs as Karim outlined his vision for the winery. Sofia, taking notes in the corner, couldn't help but be impressed by the newcomer's presentation. "Viñedos Ancestrales isn't just a winery," Karim declared, his accented Spanish adding an exotic flair to his words. "It's a legacy that deserves to be shared with the world. We'll respect its traditions while embracing innovations that will secure its future for generations to come." Vicente's face darkened at these words. "Some traditions, Señor Al-Rahman, are better left unchanged," he interjected, his voice carrying years of authority. The tension in the room was palpable as Karim smiled diplomatically. "Change and tradition aren't enemies, Señor Romero. They're dance partners in the waltz of progress." After the meeting, Sofia found herself organizing the transition documents when Karim approached her desk. Up close, she noticed the subtle details she'd missed before, the slight crinkles around his eyes when he smiled, the way he carried himself with both authority and approachability. "Señorita Martinez," he said, surprising her by knowing her name, "I've heard excellent things about your work here. I hope you'll help me understand the soul of this place." Sofia straightened in her chair, maintaining her professional composure despite the unexpected flutter in her stomach. "Of course, Señor Al-Rahman. I've prepared a comprehensive overview of our operations and traditions." He leaned against her desk, casual yet elegant. "Please call me Karim, and I'm more interested in your personal insights than just the paperwork. Would you join me for a tour tomorrow morning? I want to see this place through the eyes of someone who truly knows its heart." The request caught her off guard. This wasn't standard protocol, and she could already imagine the whispers this would generate among her colleagues. Yet something in his genuine interest made it impossible to refuse. "I would be honored," she replied, trying to ignore the knowing looks from nearby co-workers. As Karim walked away, Sofia couldn't shake the feeling that her grandmother's morning prediction was already coming true. Change was indeed coming to Viñedos Ancestrales, and somehow she knew her life would never be the same. That evening, as she helped her grandmother prepare dinner in their modest apartment overlooking Granada's ancient streets, Sofia recounted the day's events. Eleanor listened intently while stirring her famous gazpacho, a knowing smile playing on her lips. "Sometimes, mi amor," Elena said, The universe has plans we cannot begin to imagine. The key is to keep your heart open while maintaining a clear head. Sophia rolled her eyes affectionately at her grandmother's wisdom, but as she lay in bed that night, she couldn't help but wonder what tomorrow's tour would bring. The winery she knew so well suddenly felt like uncharted territory, and the mysterious new owner had already begun to challenge everything she thought she knew about her orderly world. The next morning dawned with unusual clarity, the Spanish sun painting the Sierra Nevada mountains in shades of gold and purple. Sophia arrived at the winery earlier than usual, her nerves making sleep impossible. She had chosen her outfit carefully, professional yet practical. A navy blazer over a cream blouse paired with comfortable shoes, suitable for walking through the vineyard. The early morning quiet was broken by the sound of movement coming from the owner's office. Following the noise, Sophia found herself frozen in the doorway, facing an unexpected sight. Karim was there, but not in his usual business attire. Instead, he was shirtless, completing what appeared to be the final poses of a yoga routine on a mat near the window. Sunlight streamed across his muscled back, and for a moment, Sophia forgot every professional protocol she'd ever learned. I'm so sorry, she stammered, starting to back away. I should have knocked. Karim turned, seemingly unfazed by her presence. No need for apologies, he said, reaching for a towel. I prefer to start my days centered. It helps me make better decisions. He smiled, pulling on a crisp white shirt. Besides, this is probably good practice for breaking down some of those rigid formal barriers around here. Sophia felt her cheeks flush, but managed to maintain her composure. The tour, she said, grateful for the chance to change the subject. I've prepared an itinerary that covers all the essential areas. Perfect, he replied, now fully dressed and looking every bit the powerful businessman again. Lead the way, Sophia. They began in the oldest part of the winery, where massive oak barrels lined the walls of a cave-like cellar. The air was cool and heavy with the scent of aging wine. As they walked, Sophia explained the history of each section, the specific aging processes, and the traditional methods still in use. These barrels, she said, running her hand along one of the ancient oak containers, have been here for over a century. The wood has absorbed generations of wine, creating unique flavors that can't be replicated with new materials. Karim listened intently, occasionally asking detailed questions that revealed his deep knowledge of wine production. It's fascinating, he said, how time becomes an ingredient itself. But tell me, what do you think about introducing temperature-controlled aging rooms? We could maintain tradition while ensuring more consistent results. Sophia hesitated. The inconsistencies are part of what makes each vintage special, she replied carefully. Though I suppose finding a balance between tradition and innovation is possible. They continued through the vineyard, where workers were already tending to the vines. The morning sun had grown stronger, and Sophia found herself relaxing despite her initial nervousness. Karim proved to be an engaging companion, sharing stories about his experiences with wineries worldwide, while showing genuine interest in the local techniques. My father, he revealed as they paused under an old olive tree, always said that success in business is like making wine. It requires patience, attention to detail, and respect for the process. But he also taught me that standing still means falling behind. Your father sounds wise, Sophia responded. My grandmother says something similar about life in general. She believes we should honor our roots while allowing ourselves to grow in new directions. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the professional distance between them seemed to dissolve. Then a voice called out, breaking the spell. Señor Al-Rahman. Vicente Romero approached, his expression barely concealing his disapproval at finding the owner and the assistant alone among the vines. The board members are waiting for our scheduled meeting. Ah yes, Karim said, checking his watch. Time does fly in good company. He turned to Sophia. Thank you for the tour. Your insights have been invaluable. As she watched them walk away, Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted during their morning together. The winery suddenly felt different, as if the very air had changed with the new possibilities Karim represented. Later that afternoon, she found a handwritten note on her desk. Thank you for showing me not just the winery, but its heart. Your perspective will be essential as we move forward. Okay. That evening, as Sophia shared her day's experiences with her grandmother over their traditional dinner, Elena watched her granddaughter with knowing eyes. You seem different, mi niña. she observed, serving more paella. "Your eyes shine when you speak of the changes coming to the winery." "It's just exciting to see new possibilities," Sophia defended, perhaps too quickly. "The winery has so much potential." Eleanor hummed, unconvinced. "And I suppose the handsome new owner has nothing to do with your enthusiasm?" Sophia busied herself with her food, but she couldn't deny the warm feeling that spread through her chest when she thought about the morning's tour. The winery was entering a new era, and somehow she knew she would be at the center of it all. As weeks passed, the atmosphere at Viñedos Ancestrales grew increasingly charged. Karim's vision for modernization began to take shape, and with it came a wave of uncertainty that rippled through every level of the winery. Sophia found herself at the center of this transformation, her role expanding far beyond that of a simple administrative assistant. One crisp morning, Sophia arrived at the winery to find the usually tranquil courtyard buzzing with activity. A team of technicians was installing new climate control systems in the aging rooms, while another group was setting up state-of-the-art fermentation tanks. The clash between the ancient stonework and the gleaming stainless steel equipment was a stark visual representation of the changes taking place. As she made her way to her office, Sophia overheard snippets of conversation from long-time employees, their voices tinged with worry. "First the new tanks, now this. What's next? Robots picking the grapes?" One of the older vintners grumbled. "I heard he's planning to change our entire distribution system," another added. "My cousin might lose his delivery contract." Sophia felt a pang of sympathy for her colleagues, understanding their fear of the unknown. Yet she couldn't help but feel excited about the possibilities these changes might bring. She had seen firsthand how passionate Karim was about preserving the winery's legacy while pushing it into the future. When she reached her desk, she found a memo detailing the day's schedule. A board meeting was set for the afternoon, and Karim had requested her presence. This was unusual. Administrative assistants weren't typically invited to such high-level discussions. Anticipation and nervousness fluttered in her stomach as she prepared the necessary documents. The meeting room was tense when Sophia entered. Vicente Romero sat at one end of the long table, his face set in a deep frown. Other board members fidgeted in their seats, expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. Karim stood at the head of the table, his presence commanding as always. "Ah, Sophia," Karim smiled warmly. "Thank you for joining us. I believe your insight will be valuable in today's discussion." Vicente's frown deepened. "With all due respect, Senor Al-Rahman, is it appropriate for an assistant to be present for sensitive board matters?" Karim's expression remained pleasant, but his voice carried an edge of steel. "Sophia has an intimate understanding of this winery's operations and culture. Her perspective is exactly what we need as we discuss these changes." As the meeting progressed, it became clear why Karim had wanted Sophia there. He outlined his plans for expanding into new international markets, introducing organic and biodynamic wine lines, and implementing eco-friendly practices across the production process. With each point, he turned to Sophia, asking for her thoughts on how these changes might be received by the staff or how they could be implemented while respecting tradition. Sophia found herself speaking more than she ever had in such a setting, drawing on her years of experience and her deep love for the winery. She suggested ways to introduce the new technologies gradually and how to communicate the changes to alleviate fears among the workers. "What about our loyal customers?" Vicente interjected at one point. "They expect a certain product from us. These changes risk alienating them." Sophia saw an opening. "Actually," she said, her voice stronger than she expected, "I've been reviewing our sales data. While our traditional customers are vital, we've been missing out on a growing market of younger wine enthusiasts who value innovation and sustainability. By expanding our range, we could attract new customers without losing our existing ones." Karim's eyes lit up. "Exactly. This is why your input is so valuable, Sophia." As the meeting concluded, Sophia could sense a shift in the room. Some board members who had been skeptical now looked thoughtful, while others, including Vicente, seemed even more entrenched in their opposition. Karim caught up with Sophia as she was leaving. "You were brilliant in there," he said, his voice low and warm. "I knew I could count on you to bridge the gap between the old and the new." Their eyes met, and Sophia felt that now familiar flutter in her chest. "Thank you for trusting me," she replied. I really believe in what you're trying to do here. That evening, as Sophia recounted the day's events to her grandmother, Eleanor listened with a knowing smile. It sounds like you're becoming quite the businesswoman, she said, serving up a steaming plate of ropa vieja. Just remember, mi niña, in wine and in life, the most complex flavors come from a delicate balance. Sophia nodded, understanding the deeper meaning in her grandmother's words. As she helped clean up after dinner, she couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement for what the future held. The winery was changing, and so was she. But amidst all the new developments, she was determined to hold on to the essence of what made Viñedos Ancestrales special. Later that night, as she stood on her small balcony overlooking the twinkling lights of Granada, Sophia reflected on the day's events. The winery was entering uncharted territory, and she found herself at the forefront of this transformation. It was thrilling and terrifying in equal measure, much like the growing connection she felt with Karim. As the warm Spanish night enveloped her, Sophia made a silent promise to herself. She would embrace these changes while honoring the traditions that had shaped her world. The path ahead was uncertain, but she was ready to walk it, one step at a time. The invitation came unexpectedly on a Friday afternoon. Sophia was wrapping up her weekly report when Karim appeared at her desk, his presence both exciting and unsettling as always. "Sophia," he began, his voice carrying a hint of anticipation. "I'm heading to Marrakech next week to explore some potential partnerships. I'd like you to come with me." She blinked, momentarily stunned. "Me? But surely someone from the board." "I need someone who understands the heart of this winery, not just its numbers," Karim interrupted gently. "Your insights have been invaluable here. I believe they'll be just as crucial in Marrakech." The following Monday, Sophia found herself boarding a private jet, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. She'd never left Spain before, and now she was flying to Morocco with her charismatic boss. As the plane took off, she caught Karim watching her with an amused smile. "First time flying?" he asked. She nodded, trying to mask her nervousness. "First time leaving Granada, actually." His expression softened. "Well, then we'll have to make sure this trip is unforgettable." Marrakech was a sensory overload from the moment they landed. The vibrant colors, the intoxicating scents of spices, and the bustling energy of the city overwhelmed Sophia. Karim, seeing her wide-eyed wonder, took on the role of guide, showing her the city through his eyes. Their days were filled with meetings and vineyard tours as Karim explored potential partnerships with local wine producers. Sophia found herself taking extensive notes, not just on the business aspects, but on the rich winemaking traditions of Morocco. She was fascinated by how these ancient methods could potentially blend with the techniques used at Viñedos Ancestrales. One evening, after a particularly long day of negotiations, Karim surprised her with a private dinner on the rooftop of their riad. The Marrakech skyline stretched out before them, the call to prayer echoing hauntingly in the distance. As they dined on traditional Moroccan dishes, the conversation flowed easily, moving from business to more personal topics. Sophia found herself opening up about her childhood, her grandmother's influence and her dreams for the future. "You know," Karim said, his eyes reflecting the candlelight, "when I first came to Granada, I was prepared for resistance. What I wasn't prepared for was finding someone who understands my vision so completely." Sophia felt a blush creep up her cheeks. "I just believe in preserving what's valuable while being open to new possibilities," she replied softly. Karim leaned in slightly. "That's a rare quality, Sophia, one that I've come to deeply appreciate." The moment was charged with unspoken tension, but before it could develop further, Karim's phone buzzed insistently. He excused himself to take the call, leaving Sophia to ponder the complexities of their evolving relationship. The next day brought an unexpected challenge. During a meeting with a potential partner, Sophia overheard a conversation in Arabic that set off alarm bells. Though she didn't speak the language, she recognized the name of a rival winery and caught the tone of deceit. Acting on instinct, she managed to discreetly signal Karim, warning him something was amiss. Her quick thinking allowed him to navigate the negotiation carefully, ultimately uncovering an attempt to sabotage the deal with false information about Viñedos Ancestrales' production capabilities. As they left the meeting, crisis averted, Karim turned to her with a mix of admiration and curiosity. "How did you know?" he asked. Sophia shrugged, still processing the intensity of the situation. "I just had a feeling. The way they were speaking, their body language. It didn't feel right." Karim shook his head in wonder. "You continue to amaze me, Sophia. You've just saved us from a potentially disastrous partnership." That night, as they strolled through the winding streets of the Medina, the air heavy with the scent of jasmine, Karim surprised her by opening up about his own past. "My father," he began, his voice tinged with a rarely heard vulnerability, "built an empire from nothing. He expected me to be just like him, ruthless, uncompromising. But I've always believed there's a way to succeed in business without losing your humanity." Sophia listened, touched by his candor. "Is that why you bought Viñedos Ancestrales? To prove you could do things differently?" Karim nodded. "Partly, but also because I saw something special there, a legacy worth preserving and enhancing." He turned to her, his gaze intense. "What I didn't expect was to find someone who shared that vision so completely." The air between them seemed to crackle with possibility. For a moment, Sophia thought he might kiss her, and she wasn't sure if she wanted him to or not. But the moment passed, and they continued their walk, both acutely aware of the unspoken connection growing between them. As their trip drew to a close, Sophia found herself changed in ways she couldn't fully articulate. She had discovered a confidence she didn't know she possessed, a deeper understanding of the wine business, and a complex set of feelings for Karim that both thrilled and terrified her. On the flight back to Granada, as Karim dozed in his seat, Sophia gazed out the window at the vast expanse of the Mediterranean below. She thought about the winery, her grandmother, and the path that had led her to this moment. The future was uncertain, filled with both promise and complication. But as the coastline of Spain came into view, Sophia felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, armed with new experiences and a growing belief in her own capabilities. Little did she know that the true tests, both professional and personal, were yet to come, waiting for her back in the familiar yet somehow changed world of Viñedos Ancestrales. The return to Granada brought with it a shift in the atmosphere at Viñedos Ancestrales. As Sophia stepped into the winery on her first day back, she could feel the weight of curious gazes and hushed conversations. Her trip to Marrakech with Karim had not gone unnoticed, and speculation ran rampant among her colleagues. "Well, look who's back from her Moroccan adventure," drawled Maria, one of the older office workers, her tone a mixture of curiosity and barely concealed judgment. "I hope you brought back some useful business contacts, not just a suntan." Sophia forced a polite smile, determined not to let the undercurrent of gossip affect her professionalism. "It was a very productive trip, actually. We made some exciting connections that could really benefit the winery." As she made her way to her desk, she overheard snippets of conversation that made her stomach churn. Always knew she was ambitious, but this, wonder what kind of work they were really doing. "Vicente is furious, says it's unprofessional." Trying to shake off the discomfort, Sophia immersed herself in catching up on the work that had accumulated during her absence. She was deep in concentration when a shadow fell across her desk. Looking up, she found Vicente Romero looming over her, his expression stern. "Señorita Martinez," he began, his voice clipped, "I hope you enjoyed your little excursion. Now that you're back, we need to discuss some concerning developments." Before Sophia could respond, Karim's voice cut through the tension. "Ah, Vicente, I was just looking for you. I have some exciting proposals from our Marrakech trip to share with the board. Sophia's insights were invaluable. I think you'll be impressed with what we've accomplished." Vicente's jaw tightened, but he nodded curtly and followed Karim to the conference room. Sophia released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding, grateful for the interruption, but acutely aware that her position in the winery had become more complicated than ever. Over the next few weeks, Sophia threw herself into her work with renewed vigor. She compiled detailed reports on the potential Moroccan partnerships, developed strategies for implementing some of the innovative techniques they had observed, and worked tirelessly to bridge the gap between Karim's vision and the concerns of the traditional staff. Despite her efforts, she couldn't shake the feeling of being caught in the middle of a brewing storm. The older employees viewed her with a mixture of suspicion and resentment, while Karim continued to rely on her more heavily, often seeking her opinion on key decisions. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the vineyards in hues of gold and purple, Sophia found herself alone in the main office, poring over financial projections. The sound of approaching footsteps made her look up, and she found Karim standing in the doorway, his tie loosened and a weary smile on his face. "You're working late," he observed, stepping into the room. Sophia nodded, suddenly aware of the intimate atmosphere created by the fading light and their solitude. "Just trying to get ahead on these projections for the new organic line." Karim moved closer, peering over her shoulder at the spreadsheets. "Always so dedicated," he murmured, his breath warm against her ear. "You know, I couldn't have gotten through that trip without you." She turned to face him, acutely aware of their proximity. "I'm glad I could help," she said softly, her heart racing. For a moment they stood there, the air between them charged with unspoken tension. Karim's hand moved as if to touch her face, and Sophia found herself leaning in slightly, caught in the gravitational pull of the moment. The sharp ring of a phone shattered the silence, making them both jump. Karim stepped back, clearing his throat. "I should get that," he said, his voice slightly husky. "Don't stay too late, Sophia. Even the most dedicated employees need rest." As he walked away, Sophia sank back into her chair, her mind whirling. What had almost happened? And what would it mean for her future at the winery, and for her heart? The next day, Sophia decided to confide in her grandmother, seeking wisdom over their traditional Sunday lunch. As they sat in Elena's small but cozy kitchen, the aroma of simmering paella filling the air, Sophia poured out her conflicted feelings. Elena listened patiently, her wise eyes studying her granddaughter's face. When Sophia finished, the older woman was quiet for a moment before speaking. "Mi niña," she began gently, "the heart doesn't always follow the paths we expect. But remember, in matters of love and wine, clarity comes with time. Don't rush to bottle your feelings before they've had a chance to mature." Sophia nodded, grateful for her grandmother's metaphorical advice. But as she helped clear the dishes, she couldn't shake the feeling that time was a luxury she might not have. The winery was changing rapidly, and with it, the delicate balance of her world. As she walked home that evening, the streets of Granada alive with the sounds of Sunday revelry, Sophia made a decision. She would continue to pour her heart into her work, to be the bridge between tradition and innovation that the winery needed. But she would also guard her heart, at least until she could be sure of her own feelings, and Karim's. Little did she know that events were already in motion that would test her resolve, challenge her loyalties, and force her to confront the true depths of her feelings, both for Karim and for the winery that had become so much more than just a job. The sun set over the Alhambra, casting long shadows across the city as Sophia steeled herself for whatever challenges lay ahead. In the world of wine and passion, she was learning. The most exquisite vintages often came from seasons of struggle and uncertainty. The crisp autumn air carried the scent of ripe grapes and possibility as Sophia made her way through the winery's sprawling vineyards. Harvest season was in full swing, and the atmosphere at Viñedos Ancestrales buzzed with a mixture of excitement and tension. Karim's new initiatives were beginning to bear fruit, quite literally, with the first batch of organically grown grapes ready for processing. As she approached the main building, a commotion near the storage facilities caught her attention. Smoke billowed from one of the older structures, and the sound of alarms pierced the air. Sophia's heart raced as she broke into a run, her mind flooding with worst-case scenarios. Workers were already scrambling to contain the fire, forming a bucket brigade while waiting for the fire department to arrive. Amid the chaos, Sophia spotted Karim, his usually impeccable suit covered in soot, as he directed the efforts to salvage what they could from the burning building. "What happened?" Sophia shouted over the din, reaching Karim's side. His face was grim as he turned to her. "We're not sure yet. The fire started in one of the old barrel rooms, the one storing some of our most valuable vintages." The implications hit Sophia like a physical blow. Those barrels represented not just an enormous financial investment, but decades of the winery's history and tradition. As the firefighters arrived and took control of the situation, she and Karim could only watch helplessly, as years of carefully crafted wines were potentially lost. Hours later, as the last embers were being extinguished, the full extent of the damage became clear. While the fire had been contained before spreading to other buildings, the losses were still staggering. Hundreds of barrels of aged wine, including some of Viñedos Ancestrales' most prized vintages, had been destroyed. In the aftermath, as insurance adjusters and investigators swarmed the premises, Sofia found herself working around the clock. She coordinated with the authorities, managed communications with worried distributors and customers, and tried to keep the rest of the winery's operations running smoothly despite the crisis. Karim, for his part, seemed to age years in a matter of days. The strain of dealing with the financial implications and the potential damage to the winery's reputation weighed heavily on him. Sofia often found him working late into the night, poring over reports and making endless phone calls to salvage what he could of their business relationships. It was during one of these late nights, about a week after the fire, that Sofia stumbled upon something disturbing. While organizing documents for the investigation, she came across a maintenance report that had been filed just days before the fire. It noted several electrical issues in the old barrel room, but had apparently been ignored. Her blood ran cold as she read through the details. This wasn't just an unfortunate accident, it was negligence. But as she dug deeper, cross-referencing dates and signatures, a more troubling picture emerged. The report had been submitted to Vicente Romero, who had neither acted on it nor passed it along to Karim. Sofia sat back in her chair, her mind reeling. Could Vicente have deliberately suppressed the report? The implications were almost too terrible to contemplate. She knew of his opposition to Karim's changes, but to risk the winery's legacy in an attempt to undermine the new owner seemed unthinkable. Unsure of how to proceed, Sofia decided to confide in Karim. She found him in his office, tie loosened and sleeves rolled up, looking exhausted. "Karim," she began hesitantly, "I found something you need to see." As she laid out her discovery, she watched Karim's expression change from confusion to shock, and then to a cold anger she had never seen before. "This is—" he trailed off, running a hand through his hair. "Sofia, do you understand what this means?" She nodded solemnly. "It means the fire might not have been an accident, and that someone high up in the winery might be responsible." Karim stood pacing the room. "We need to be careful with this information. If Vicente is indeed behind this, he's already shown he's willing to go to extreme lengths to oppose me." Sofia felt a chill run down her spine. "What do we do?" He turned to her, his eyes intense. "For now, we keep this between us. We need more evidence before we can act. Can I trust you to help me investigate this discreetly?" "Of course," Sofia replied without hesitation. "I care about this winery too, Karim. I want to get to the truth, whatever it may be." As she left his office that night, Sofia felt the weight of their secret pressing down on her. She was now entangled in something far more complex and dangerous than she had ever imagined. The winery she loved, the place that had been like a second home to her, was now the center of a potential conspiracy. Walking home through the quiet streets of Granada, the Alhambra looming in the distance like a silent guardian, Sofia steeled herself for what was to come. She knew that uncovering the truth could have far-reaching consequences, not just for the winery but for her own future and her relationship with Karim. As she climbed the stairs to her apartment, her grandmother's words echoed in her mind. "In wine and in life, the most valuable truths often lie hidden, waiting for someone brave enough to uncover them." Sofia took a deep breath, knowing that in the days to come, her courage, loyalty, and integrity would be tested like never before. The flames that had engulfed the barrel room had ignited a different kind of fire, one that threatened to consume everything and everyone she held dear. The weeks following the fire were a delicate dance of investigation and secrecy. Sofia found herself leading a double life, maintaining her regular duties at the winery, while discreetly gathering information that could shed light on the true cause of the fire. Every document she examined, every conversation she overheard, could potentially hold a crucial piece of the puzzle. Karim, for his part, threw himself into damage control. He met with investors, reassured partners, and worked tirelessly to keep the winery's reputation intact. But Sofia could see the toll it was taking on him. The lines around his eyes deepened, and the easy charm he once exuded was replaced by a guarded weariness. One afternoon, as Sofia was discreetly reviewing security footage from the day of the fire, she noticed something odd. Vicente Romero had entered the barrel room just hours before the fire started, which in itself wasn't unusual. What caught her attention was his furtive behavior and the small package he carried, a package he didn't have when he left the room. Her heart racing, Sophia knew she had to share this information with Karim immediately. She found him in the vineyard inspecting the grapes that had survived the disaster. "Karim," she called out, trying to keep her voice low despite her excitement, "I found something you need to see." As they huddled over her tablet, watching the grainy footage, Karim's expression darkened. "This is troubling," he said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "But it's not definitive proof. We need more." Sophia nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. Accusing a board member of sabotage was no small matter. "What's our next move?" she asked. Karim thought for a moment, his eyes scanning the vineyard as if searching for answers among the vines. "We need to access Vicente's office records. There might be emails or documents that could corroborate our suspicions." The plan they formulated was risky. Using her position as an administrative assistant, Sophia would create a diversion that would draw Vicente out of his office. Meanwhile, Karim would use his owner's access to quickly search for any incriminating evidence. As the day of their planned operation dawned, Sophia felt a mixture of anticipation and dread. She had never imagined herself involved in corporate espionage, yet here she was, about to play a crucial role in uncovering a potential crime. The diversion went smoothly. Sophia managed to lure Vicente away with a fabricated issue regarding some important export documents. As soon as he was clear, she signaled Karim, who slipped into the office. Those next 15 minutes were the longest of Sophia's life. She kept Vicente engaged in conversation, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure he could hear it. Just as she was running out of ways to stall, she saw Karim emerge from the office, giving her a subtle nod. Later that evening, after the winery had emptied for the day, Sophia met Karim in his office. The evidence he had uncovered was damning. Emails between Vicente and a rival winery revealed a plot to sabotage Karim's leadership, culminating in the deliberate ignition of the fire. "I can't believe it," Sophia whispered, her voice shaking with a mixture of anger and disbelief. How could he betray the winery like this? Karim's face was a mask of grim determination. Desperation makes people do unthinkable things. Vicente saw my changes as a threat to everything he had built here. In his mind, he was probably trying to save the winery. As they discussed their next steps, the gravity of the situation weighed heavily on both of them. They had the evidence to expose Vicente, but doing so would undoubtedly send shockwaves through the entire company. "We need to call an emergency board meeting," Karim decided. "Tomorrow morning, we'll present the evidence and let the board decide how to proceed." Sophia nodded, feeling a strange mix of relief and apprehension. "What do you need me to do?" Karim looked at her, his eyes softening for the first time in weeks. "You've already done more than I had any right to ask, Sophia. But I need you there tomorrow. Your testimony, your integrity, they'll be crucial in convincing the board." As she left the office that night, Sophia felt as if she was standing on the edge of a precipice. Tomorrow would change everything, for the winery, for Karim, and for her. The weight of the truth they had uncovered pressed down on her, a burden she never expected to bear. Walking home through the moonlit streets of Granada, Sophia found herself at the foot of the Alhambra. She gazed up at the ancient fortress, its walls having witnessed centuries of secrets and revelations. Drawing strength from its enduring presence, she made a silent vow to see this through, whatever the cost. Back in her small apartment, Sophia called her grandmother. Without revealing specifics, she sought the older woman's wisdom one last time before the storm that was to come. "Abuela," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "how do you know if you're doing the right thing even when it feels like the hardest thing in the world?" Elena's voice came through, warm and reassuring. "Mi niña, the right path is often the most difficult. But if your heart and your conscience align, then you must follow them, no matter how treacherous the road." As Sophia lay in bed that night, sleep eluding her, she realized that tomorrow would test not just her loyalty to the winery, but her feelings for Karim as well. The lines between professional duty and personal attachment had blurred, and in the harsh light of day, she would have to confront truths about herself that she had long avoided. The first light of dawn found Sophia already awake, preparing herself for the day that would change everything. As she dressed, choosing an outfit that felt like armor, she steeled herself for the battle ahead. The truth, long hidden in the shadows, was about to be brought into the light, and Sophia was ready to face whatever consequences it might bring. The weeks following the fire were a blur of activity for Sophia. By day, she worked tirelessly to keep the winery running smoothly, reassuring clients and coordinating the ongoing cleanup efforts. By night, she and Karim pored over documents, searching for any clue that might shed light on Vicente's involvement in the disaster. Their clandestine meetings often stretched into the early hours of the morning, the two of them huddled over Sophia's desk, voices low to avoid attracting attention from the night security. The proximity and shared secret created an intimacy that Sophia found both thrilling and terrifying. One particularly late night, as they examined financial records dating back several years, Karim's hand brushed against hers. The touch, though accidental, sent a jolt through Sophia. Their eyes met, and for a moment the investigation was forgotten. Karim leaned in slightly, his gaze dropping to her lips. Sophia's heart raced, but a sudden noise from the hallway snapped them both back to reality. They sprang apart, the moment broken, but the tension lingered in the air like the bouquet of a fine wine. Clearing her throat, Sophia refocused on the task at hand. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a series of transactions. "There are several large payments to a company I don't recognize. Horizonte Consulting. Have you heard of them?" Karim frowned, leaning in to examine the records. "No, and that's odd. As the owner, I should be aware of all major expenses. Can you dig into this company?" Sophia nodded, already pulling up search engines on her computer. What she found made her blood run cold. "Karim, Horizonte Consulting doesn't seem to exist, at least not as a real company. It's a shell registered in the Cayman Islands." Karim's expression darkened. "A front for embezzlement? But why? Vicente comes from old money. He doesn't need to steal. Unless," Sophia mused, a terrible thought forming, "he's been funneling money out of the winery to intentionally weaken it. Maybe he hoped that financial troubles would force you to sell." The implications hung heavy in the air. If true, it meant that Vicente's opposition to Karim went far beyond mere disagreement over business practices. It was a calculated plan to undermine the entire operation. Over the next few days, Sophia discreetly reached out to old contacts and friends in the local business community. She was careful not to raise suspicions, framing her inquiries as general interest in the wine industry's financial practices. Bit by bit, a disturbing picture began to emerge. Vicente, it seemed, had connections to several other traditional wineries in the region. There were whispers of a coalition forming, one dedicated to preserving the old ways of winemaking and resisting foreign influence. Sophia's stomach churned as she realized the depth of the conspiracy they were potentially facing. As she delved deeper into her investigation, Sophia couldn't help but feel a growing sense of betrayal. Vicente had always been stern but fair in her eyes, a pillar of the winery's traditions. The idea that he could be behind such destructive actions shook her to her core. One afternoon, as she was discreetly examining some old contracts in the archive room, Sophia heard footsteps approaching. Quickly, she shoved the documents back into place and pretended to be organizing shelves. Vicente rounded the corner, his eyebrows raising in surprise at her presence. "Señorita Martinez," he said, his tone carefully neutral. "I didn't expect to find you here." Sophia forced a smile. "Just doing some organizing, Señor Romero. You know how I like to keep things in order." Vicente's eyes narrowed slightly. "Indeed. Your dedication to the winery has been quite noticeable lately, especially your close work with Señor Al-Rahman." The implied accusation hung in the air. Sophia felt her cheeks flush but held her ground. "I'm simply doing my job, sir, ensuring the smooth operation of Viñedos Ancestrales, especially after the recent tragedy." Vicente stepped closer, his voice lowering. "Be careful, Sophia. Loyalty is a precious thing in this business. Make sure yours is placed wisely." As he walked away, Sophia leaned against the shelves, her heart pounding. The veiled threat was clear, and she realized that their investigation hadn't gone as unnoticed as they'd hoped. That evening, she recounted the encounter to Karim in hushed tones as they walked through the vineyard, ostensibly discussing the upcoming harvest. Karim's jaw clenched. "This is getting dangerous, Sophia. Maybe you should step back. Let me handle it from here." Sophia shook her head firmly. "No, I'm in this too deep now. This winery means as much to me as it does to you. We'll see this through together." As the sun set over the vines, painting the sky in vibrant oranges and purples, Karim turned to face her. His expression was a mixture of admiration and concern. "Sophia, I need you to know something. Whatever happens, whatever we uncover, But before he could finish, Sophia's phone buzzed insistently. It was a message from an unknown number containing only a time and a location, an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Granada. "Someone wants to meet," she said, showing Karim the message. "Tomorrow night. They say they have information about the fire." Karim's expression grew serious. "It could be a trap." Sophia nodded, her mind racing. "Or it could be the break we've been looking for. Either way, we have to go." As they stood there, the weight of their shared secret and the dangers ahead pressing down on them, Sophia felt a shift in their relationship. They were no longer just employer and employee or even friends. They were partners in a high-stakes game where the future of Viñedos Ancestrales, and perhaps their own futures, hung in the balance. The approaching night seemed to whisper of revelations and dangers to come. Sophia steeled herself, knowing that the next 24 hours could change everything. As she and Karim walked back to the main building, their steps in sync, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking towards a moment of truth that would test them both in ways they couldn't imagine. The following evening arrived with an air of foreboding. Sophia and Karim had spent the day going through their normal routines, hyper-aware of every glance and whispered conversation around them. As dusk fell, they slipped away separately, meeting at a discreet location before heading to the abandoned warehouse. The structure loomed before them, a hulking silhouette against the darkening sky. Sophia felt a shiver run down her spine as they approached, the gravel crunching beneath their feet, the only sound in the eerie silence. "Stay close," Karim murmured, his hand briefly touching the small of her back. The gesture, though simple, sent a wave of warmth through Sophia, steadying her nerves. As they entered the dimly lit warehouse, their eyes adjusting to the gloom, a figure emerged from the shadows. Sophia's breath caught in her throat as she recognized the man. It was Diego, one of the long-time workers from the winery's maintenance team. "Señorita Martinez, Señor Al-Rahman," Diego said, his voice trembling slightly. "Thank you for coming. I have information about the fire." Information that could change everything. Over the next hour, Diego unraveled a tale that left both Sophia and Karim reeling. He revealed that he had overheard Vicente discussing plans to sabotage the winery with someone on the phone just days before the fire. Diego, fearing for his job, had kept quiet, but the guilt had been eating away at him. He spoke of making sure some electrical issues would be overlooked, Diego said, his eyes darting nervously around the warehouse. "I didn't understand at first, but after the fire, I knew he was behind it." As Diego continued, providing dates, times, and overheard conversations, Sophia felt a mix of vindication and horror. Their suspicions had been correct, but the depth of Vicente's betrayal was even greater than they had imagined. Karim listened intently, his expression growing darker with each revelation. When Diego finished, he turned to Sophia, his eyes filled with a determination she had never seen before. "We have what we need," he said quietly. "It's time to end this." As they left the warehouse, plans forming rapidly, Sophia couldn't shake a sense of unease. They had their evidence, but something told her that Vicente wouldn't go down without a fight. The next morning, Karim called an emergency board meeting. As the members filed into the conference room, Sophia could feel the tension crackling in the air. Vicente entered last, his eyes narrowing as he saw Sophia seated at Karim's right hand. Karim stood, his presence commanding the room. "Ladies and gentlemen of the board," he began, his voice steady and resolute, "I've called you here today to address a grave matter concerning the future of Viñedos Ancestrales." What followed was a masterful presentation of the evidence they had gathered. Sophia watched as shock, disbelief, and anger played across the faces of the board members. Vicente, for his part, remained stone-faced, though Sophia could see a vein pulsing at his temple. As Karim concluded, laying out the final pieces of evidence, including Diego's testimony, Vicente suddenly stood, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "This is preposterous," he bellowed, his face flushed with anger. "You have no proof, only the words of a disgruntled employee and circumstantial evidence. I've dedicated my life to this winery, and I won't stand for these baseless accusations." The room erupted into chaos, board members shouting over each other. Sophia felt her heart racing, knowing that everything hung in the balance. It was then that she made a split-second decision. Standing up, she raised her voice above the din. "There's one more piece of evidence," she said, her words cutting through the noise. All eyes turned to her as she pulled out her phone. "I have a recording." The room fell silent as Sophia played the audio, a conversation she had secretly recorded between Vicente and an unknown associate, discussing the unfortunate accident that would befall the winery. The color drained from Vicente's face as his own voice filled the room, damning him with every word. As the recording ended, the silence was deafening. Then, slowly, one of the eldest board members stood. "I move for an immediate vote to remove Vicente Romero from his position and to begin legal proceedings." The vote was unanimous. As security was called to escort a shell-shocked Vicente from the premises, Sophia felt a strange mix of triumph and sadness. The winery had been saved, but at a great cost. In the aftermath of the meeting, as the board members filed out still reeling from the revelations, Karim turned to Sophia. His eyes were filled with a mix of gratitude, admiration, and something deeper that made her heart skip a beat. "Sophia," he said softly, taking her hands in his, "I couldn't have done this without you. You've saved Viñedos Ancestrales, and you've shown me what true dedication and integrity look like." As they stood there, the weight of everything they had been through settling around them, Sophia realized that they had crossed a threshold. The lines between professional and personal had blurred beyond recognition, and there was no going back. Karim leaned in, his voice barely above a whisper. "I think it's time we talked about us, don't you?" Sophia nodded, her heart pounding. As they left the conference room together, she knew that whatever came next, for the winery and for them, would be a new chapter, full of challenges and possibilities. The sun was setting over the vineyards as they stepped outside, casting a golden glow over the land that had seen so much turmoil. But as Sophia looked at Karim, she felt a sense of hope. They had weathered the storm together and emerged stronger for it. Whatever the future held, she knew that the bonds forged in this crucible of trust and shared purpose would not easily be broken. As they walked towards the vines, their hands intertwined, Sophia felt as though she was stepping into a future as rich and complex as the finest wine Viñedos Ancestrales had ever produced. The weeks following Vicente's dramatic removal from the winery passed in a whirlwind of activity. The news had sent shockwaves through Granada's tight-knit wine community, and Sophia found herself at the center of a storm of speculation and gossip. But amidst the chaos, a new order was slowly emerging at Viñedos Ancestrales. Karim, freed from the shadow of sabotage, threw himself into implementing his vision for the winery with renewed vigor. The blend of tradition and innovation that he had long dreamed of was finally taking shape. Solar panels now glinted atop ancient stone buildings, while state-of-the-art fermentation tanks stood alongside centuries-old oak barrels. Sophia, for her part, found her role evolving in ways she had never imagined. Karim had appointed her as the new director of operations, a position that recognized both her invaluable contributions during the crisis and her deep understanding of the winery's soul. She took to the role with a passion that surprised even herself, bridging the gap between the old guard and Karim's modernizing impulses. But it wasn't just their professional lives that were transforming. The connection that had grown between them during their investigation had blossomed into something deeper. Their late-night strategy sessions now often ended with long walks through the moonlit vineyards, hands intertwined, discussing dreams for the future. One balmy evening, as they stood atop a hill overlooking the winery, Karim turned to Sophia, his eyes reflecting the starlight. "You know," he said softly, "when I first came here, I thought I was just acquiring a business. I never imagined I'd find a partner in every sense of the word." Sophia felt her heart swell. "And I never thought I'd fall in love with the man who turned my world upside down," she replied, leaning into his embrace. Their relationship, once the subject of hushed whispers and raised eyebrows, had become a symbol of the winery's rebirth. The employees, seeing the genuine affection and shared vision between them, had rallied around the couple, embracing the new direction of Viñedos Ancestrales with unexpected enthusiasm. As summer turned to autumn, the first harvest under the new regime approached. The air was thick with anticipation as workers moved through the vineyards, carefully selecting the ripest grapes. Sophia worked alongside them, her hands stained purple, feeling a connection to the land that she had never experienced before. The day of the first pressing arrived, and the entire winery gathered to witness the event. Karim and Sophia stood side by side as the grapes were crushed, the rich aroma of fresh juice filling the air. As the first drops of what would become their new flagship wine flowed into the tanks, a cheer went up from the assembled crowd. Later that evening, as the celebration continued around them, Karim led Sophia to a quiet corner of the winery. "I have something for you," he said, a hint of nervousness in his voice that she found endearing. From his pocket, he produced a small velvet box. Sophia's breath caught as he opened it, revealing a stunning ring. The band was crafted from ancient grapevines, carefully preserved and transformed into a work of art. Set atop it was a diamond, its facets reflecting the warm glow of the winery lights. "Sophia Martinez," Karim began, his voice full of emotion, "you have been my partner in saving this winery, in creating a new future, and in showing me what true love means. Will you be my partner in life as well? Will you marry me?" Tears welling in her eyes, Sophia nodded, unable to speak. As Karim slipped the ring onto her finger, cheers erupted around them. They turned to see the entire staff of the winery watching, glasses raised in celebration. In that moment, surrounded by the people who had become her family, in the place that had shaped her life in so many ways, Sophia felt a sense of completion she had never known before. As the festivities continued late into the night, Sophia found a quiet moment to call her grandmother. Elena's joy was palpable even through the phone. "Mi niña," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "I always knew your path would lead you to something extraordinary. You have not just found love, but you have helped create something beautiful that will last for generations." The months that followed were a blur of wedding preparations and winery business. The first bottles of their new vintage were released to critical acclaim, with reviewers praising the perfect balance of tradition and innovation. Orders poured in from around the world, and Viñedos Ancestrales quickly became the talk of the international wine community. On a perfect spring day, with the vineyards in full bloom, Sophia and Karim exchanged vows in front of friends, family, and the entire winery staff. The ceremony, held among the vines, was a beautiful blend of their cultures and a testament to the unity they had fostered at Viñedos Ancestrales. As they shared their first kiss as husband and wife, Sophia felt as though her life had come full circle. The shy administrative assistant who had once doubted her place in the world had blossomed into a confident leader, a loving partner, and a vital part of a thriving legacy. That evening, as the sun set over their celebration, casting a golden glow across the vineyards, Sophia and Karim raised a toast with glasses of their new vintage. "To new beginnings," Karim said, his eyes shining with love and pride. "And to the perfect blend," Sophia added, thinking of how their lives, like the finest wines, had melded together to create something truly extraordinary. As they looked out over the winery that had brought them together, Sophia knew that this was just the beginning of their story. Together, they would continue to nurture Viñedos Ancestrales, helping it grow and evolve while always honoring its rich heritage. Their love, like the vines that surrounded them, had strong roots and endless potential for growth. And so, as the stars began to twinkle above the ancient lands of Granada, a new chapter began, not just for Sophia and Karim, but for Viñedos Ancestrales and all whose lives were touched by its enduring legacy. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope that Sophia and Karim's journey has touched your hearts as deeply as it has ours. Their tale of love, perseverance, and the perfect blend of tradition and innovation is just one of the many captivating stories we have to share. If you've enjoyed this audiobook, we invite you to explore our specially curated playlist of equally enthralling narratives. You can find it by clicking the link to your left. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up if Sophia and Karim's story resonated with you. Every day, we bring you unique tales that explore the complexities of life, love, and the human spirit. Stay tuned for our upcoming content. We have many more rich and diverse stories waiting to be told. We'd love to hear your thoughts on Sophia and Karim's adventure. What was your favorite moment? Did their story inspire you in any way? Share your reflections in the comments below. Your insights and experiences add another layer of depth to these narratives, creating a community of storytellers and listeners. Remember, like a fine wine, great stories are meant to be savored and shared. So gather your friends, pour a glass of your favorite vintage, and immerse yourself in the world of our audiobooks. Until our next tale, may your life be filled with love, adventure, and the perfect blend of experiences. Cheers.